Hiya, I'm Jasper, and welcome to your video review for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 Spoiler Edition. So, spoiler alert, I have my spoiler-free review linked in the description down below, so this is the spoiler review. So, last chance to get out while you still can, otherwise all the spoilers. So, one thing that I did want to clarify from my spoiler-free review is that I said there was one scene where the CGI didn't quite work. And that scene that I was talking about was at the very end when Groot was dancing with the two random, white-haired little girl peoples. Um, they just did not match. There was something with the lighting or how he was positioned or how they were just, kind of ignoring this giant tall creature thing. Like, whatever it was, it just looked off because there was one in front of him and one kind of behind him, and that just did not work. The other thing is that especially when the second person grabbed the thing out of his hand, it looked really funky. So, yeah, so that's what I was talking about. But thinking about it further, I do also think that when they were in their spacesuits going down to land on the organic core thing, some of that looked pretty fake. But it had some fun music going, and they had the fun turn, so it didn't bother me at all. It was kind of fun. Some of the other things that I wanted to point out was the I knew that once the High Evolutionary had the little ring thing around his face, I was like, oh, it's clearly some type of mask thing. Why? Because I've seen Star Trek Insurrection, and I know that that's just his skin peeled back, and that eventually, at some point, it was gonna peel off. I wasn't expecting quite that level of raw scarness that he blamed Rocket for. I also wonder, if he is able to make this entire society, why can't he fix his face, normally, just regrow his own skin? You know what I mean? So that was a little odd. Also, I also meant to, but forgot to include, Rocket's buddies, the rabbit, the walrus, and the otter. Did anybody else get really strong Toy Story 1 vibes from them? It felt like Sid from Toy Story 1 had gotten a hold of these animals and just done things to them. And honestly, if they weren't so nice, they were pretty grotesque looking and just really just disturbing looking. And I think if they had not been super duper nice, I don't know how they would have gotten the PG-13 rating that I assume they got, because they definitely didn't get an R. Speaking of R, I thought it was fun that they did throw in the F-bomb, but it was a little ridiculous that she was like, oh, there's no button in that button. And it was also funny when she got in where she was like, the instructions were unclear. It's well, there were no instructions. And what he was saying, it wasn't really instructions so much as telling him to do the thing. I also feel like she would have just ripped the door off, or ripped the handle, because she's strong enough that if she was going like this and it wasn't budging, she would have just tried to pull harder and ripped it off. But the comedic value, I think, was high enough that I'm glad they included that scene. I didn't really buy Mantis just getting on the back of the motorcycle with Drax, but I get that they had to get them out of there somehow, and it was a fun way to do it. And so if you're going to do something that doesn't make quite as much sense in Guardians of the Galaxy movie, just make sure it's fun. And they did. So, yeah, and I did like how Nebula seems to have turned a corner. I don't know if maybe they were doing a comic book reference, but when they were when she was like, no, it looks, or I don't remember who, was just it looks like you two, what you're describing is a relationship between you two with Star-Lord and and not Gamora, her sister, where it's just Nebula and him, and they kind of look at each other, and I kind of get it. I do feel like they kind of get along, and I just wonder, was that a comic book thing where those two were together rather than him and Gamora, or that they happened later, or they happened later? I don't know, but I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to Nebula and him getting together. I think that would be kind of fun. I think they would work well together. Speaking of people working well together, I really hope that we get a Gamora story with her Ravagers. Why? Because I love Sylvester Stallone, and I think it would be interesting to see a movie with Sylvester Stallone and Zoe Saldana and the red Naga looking thing that can use a sling ring. And I think that would be really fun to see how they could make a story out of that. But I also would kind of want to see the Rocket Raccoon Guardians of the Galaxy, with the giant Groot and the random little girl who I don't know if she grew up or why she has special powers, but it's cool that she does. And yeah, so that would be fun. One of the other things that I like is that they sort of explain why, in some of the other Guardians movies or like out here in space movies, you're like, okay, what are the rules? Like, are you in space or are you not in space when you're going around and doing these things? Because it looks like you're in space, but then all of a sudden, once you're out in this space, now you're having the freeze effect and the blow up effect, but you didn't have it here. Like, what? Which one is it? I like how they sort of answered it by like, oh, this is a space dock. So even with the Nowhere head, there was technically a space dock, so like that's where they had to align. That being said, I also feel like while it was awesome and I love the cosmonaut dog, like she was one of my favorite characters. I loved her like obsession with like, no, I'm a good dog. No, you take it back. Like that was just a fun bit, and I'm so glad they included that. And while it was awesome and badass to see her hold the ships together and hold that like airtight seal to allow them to cross, I also feel like if they hadn't had her, it would have been easy just to be like, oh, extend the shield or extend the airtight thing with like a press of the button to like just angle whatever thing is generating it slightly out. So, but I'm down for having characters do things to show badassery. Speaking of badassery and how characters are showing things, I feel like there was an editing mistake, or maybe I just blacked out for a second, because at the end of the movie, he dropped, like, they are running for the edge of the ship. I swear they're this close to the end of the ship, and then he drops his Zune, bends down, grabs it, and then suddenly he is this far, like just running distance away from the end. And like it didn't tumble, and I thought that he was like right on the edge with everyone else, but somehow he magically gets rocketed back. Like, and I get that the ship's separated, so like that's why that gap could have been bigger just from him like, oh, bending down and picking it up, and then there was some, explosive just to like blast him apart that far. But why was he so far back? Like, that just didn't make any sense. But it was still a fun scene. I was like, I feel like they cut something out for why he was back there so far, and they just decided to edit it where he dropped a Zune. So, yeah. The other thing is I'm talking to furries here, so maybe I'm wrong. But I think that they, like, you're really, really straining Cosmodog's like brain power to keep the ships together for a bunch of animals. I'm glad that they saved the animals, but how bad would y'all have felt if like all of the Guardians and the Cosmodog just got squished and then she died from overexertion to try and save the animals? But I understand why Rocket needed to save the animals, so I get it. Just made me think of like, when I saw that part. Also, what did the High Evolutionary's helper person who tried to take over think she was going to accomplish? Has she never seen him do the like body explosion thing? I feel like she has because of how crazy he is all the time. She had to have seen him do that at least one other time and know that was going to happen. But whatever. I also did like how they did a good job of balancing power in this, where, he has clear just like strength power suit things that can do things, but he's not all powerful like Ronan was, who was just overpowered and, just nigh undefeatable. But I also know that they kind of gave a little bit of that to Adam Warlock. So, for full transparency, I've never read any of the comic books, so I have no attachment to Adam Warlock. I was reading the trivia, and apparently he was supposed to be in this. He was going to be in the second one, but then there was too many new characters. Whereas this time around, there's a lot of returning characters, not so many new characters. So then they included him in this one. I have no idea if he was accurate to his comic book self, and I don't really care because I loved him in this one because that guy who plays him, he was like an asshole in the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe series, the Chronicles of Narnia, and he was an asshole in the Maze Runner. And so I'm glad that while he's introduced as kind of an asshole character, I like that he wasn't an asshole character because I'm glad that kid isn't getting like Joffrey'd. I want him to be able to play non-asshole characters. And in this case, he wasn't a bad guy. He was just doing what his mom told him to. He was like, okay, Mom, I'm going to go do the thing for you that you told me to. And his thing just happened to be, beating the shit out of Guardians and trying to murder, Rocket or retrieve him or whatever. So, what he was doing was bad, but like, he's, has the intelligence of a child and just doing what his mom told him to do. I like that they brought back a Gold Chick because she was funny, and I also feel like they could decide that she didn't die in that explosion because maybe the gold people are really resistant because Adam didn't die in that explosion. I liked the amount of power that he had and that he was able to take on all the Guardians, but then they still showed that like the Guardians together are strong because yeah, Drax was able to beat the crap out of him a bit more, but wasn't, still wasn't going to be quite winning. But then Nebula, who was not strong enough to get him, did have the ability to stab through him. So I thought that was good. I thought that was good to show the teamwork. It's sort of like the Fantastic Four individually wouldn't be able to defeat X, Y, or Z, but together they can. So that was good. And yeah, there was a lot of fun in this. I don't know that I necessarily buy all of the Guardians suddenly needing to break up. It felt a little bit like they were just like, and all right, this is the last one we're going. So okay, last 5 minutes, we're gonna come up with reasons for them to leave. So I don't know that I necessarily thought that was the best, but I also understand that you've had these characters and you have pretty much concluded the story of them together, and you're leaving on a very high note. And I would much prefer them to leave on a very high note and go their separate ways and not necessarily be in the same movie again, in the same setting, rather than just try and repeat things over and over again until it gets stale and just overdone and not fun anymore. So, yeah. I kind of hope that we do get to see more of Rocket stuff, but they, at the very end Stinger thing, they were like, oh, Star-Lord will return. So my guess is that he will return in some Avengers-esque type movie, not necessarily with a Guardians of the Galaxy movie. And I don't know if they'll make a Guardians of the Galaxy with Rocket, but I feel like there's a lot of CGI characters. Speaking of CGI characters, with Groot, when I first saw his fat guy form, it looks like he's wearing somebody is wearing a styrofoam suit type of thing, or a Power Rangers bad guy suit. When I first saw it in the holiday special, I was like, really? That's the direction you're going to go? You couldn't just make him grow up to be the Groot from Guardians of the Galaxy 1? That was a perfectly awesome form, and I liked it, and it was fun, it was great, and you could have done it, and you didn't. You went with this, and I figured that they went with that because they could have somebody wearing the suit and then just add some CGI to whatever bends, they could just make it more tree, just make their job easier with animation, and then also have something for people to look at rather than just maybe like a skinny guy in a blue suit wearing a tall thing. That being said, I haven't seen any special features, so maybe he was entirely CGI and there was still just a skinny guy in a blue suit with like a camera on the top of his head so that people know where the eye line is. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know, but I feel like this was more of an actor wearing a suit. And so I was like, okay, they're saving some money and making it easier for the actors. But not a big fan of the format. And then when Star-Lord handed him his guns and he's like, you know what to do with this, I was like, oh, he's going to put them inside himself and sneak those in. That makes sense. And what do you know, that's what happened. But what I especially loved is that I was not expecting the 7 other guns that he had inside of him that he was able to use. And I was like, you know what? I am sold on larger bodied Groot now, because this form makes total sense if you're going to be able to do this with guns and whatnot. That was fun. I am hoping that at some point we get an explanation for why Star-Lord's guns are so powerful and special. Because Groot had 7 other guns and they all ran out of ammunition and he dropped most of them, but Star-Lord guns were still able to take on the High Evolutionary and all these other things, and a little bit of Adam Warlock and whatnot. So what is special about his guns? I'm sure the comics explain it. I'm not going to look that up. I want the movies to explain it. But I also liked his ship, how it divided into 3. I don't know that there was any tactical advantage because they just kind of got destroyed and did the other thing. But it was fun to see that capability. I liked his new ship. I liked how they were rolling around in it. And yeah, I liked that the guy who inherited the Mohawk thing, I like that he finally got it to work, but, it wasn't the ultimate weapon and able to take on everything, because, yeah, he got it stuck in the cement. So that was fun to see. But, man, the animal things, like the hybrid animals, man, they were just so gross. So gross. Oh, just to look at. Every time they were on screen, I was like, why? Why can't you be beautiful? So... yeah, there was a lot of furries. And then when they went to that planet, the Counter-Earth, why he decided to call it Counter-Earth was clearly just because of comics. And that's one of the things that I was like, really? You couldn't... I get that you're trying to satisfy the comic boy fanboy thing of oh, he called it Counter-Earth, but why Counter-Earth? Why, of all the planets, do you need to have Earth, and why Counter-Earth? And I don't know. But I'm sure that many furries appreciated that he basically made a furry planet. and I liked being able to see all of the anthro furry people out there. I didn't want to give any of that away, but it was really fun to see. However, I do think that they still left up the question of what happens if furry species A has a kid with furry species B, because they did not answer that question in any of the like photos that I could remember seeing. Is that all of the same species were paired up? It's same species. There was no cross species thing. So that is a question that I still think needs to be answered that they didn't. Maybe Zootopia will answer it with the fox and the bunny. We'll see. But this movie did not answer that question. What do you think would be the answer to that question? So yeah, but still a fun planet, and yeah, I wanted to talk about some of the things that I really enjoyed. I loved Nathan Fillion in this. Anything that Nathan Fillion is in, Captain Malcolm Reynolds, I will watch. He is just fantastic. Any scene that he is in, he will always add just the right amount of heart and comedy. And I am curious how many of those lines that he gave were from the script versus that he ad-libbed. But there's very few people that I think could pull off the ridiculousness of those like Pufferman suits and still make them be fun or intimidating or even just believable. And I bought it when he was in it because he just owned it. Like, he has the capability to sell me on those ridiculous suits, and it was fun. Also, Star-Lord had me. Star-Lord had me when he was like, no, they will believe me if I just blah, blah, blah. And, I thought it was going to lead to another funny thing of him failing and then them doing something else or whatever. But the different direction where he was like, yeah, no, even I'm not that stupid. I just got in and just turned them all off. Like, I was like, oh, I was not expecting that. And clearly she wasn't either. But yeah, that was good. I like that Gamora just wasn't, head over heels for him. I like that she's a slightly different type of Gamora. She hasn't had the same life experiences, but I could kind of see the start of their relationship again, so I don't know that I have any hope that him and Nebula will get together. But yeah, it's good. It's a good time. Yeah, I think that kind of covers everything that I can think of that I really enjoyed with this. Yeah, the High Evolutionary was fun. I liked him. I liked seeing the animals that he evolved, and I still think that he was maybe overreacting for Rocket just having one idea. But man, young Rocket was just so adorable, so ridiculously adorable. I like however they modified, the voice to make him young. I thought that was quite effective. And yeah, I think that's all I really have. So thanks for coming. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you at the next one. Bye.